Hello and welcome back to Gemini Exchange. Today's episode is all about spirituality. The actual podcast title that we have is Spirituality, a Tool for Personal Development and Transformation. However, before we get all into that, Desi, how did this full moon in Libra treat you? Because I definitely have some thoughts.
Okay. So last night, was it the 11th and the 12th or just the 12th? I think it was,
I think it's like the 12th and the 13th actually. I think on the 11th it was still waxing. And then last night was when it was like completely full.
and Venus went direct
Yes.
yesterday. So yesterday, I actually stayed in. So, and I know that I told you like, oh, maybe we should like record this podcast later on in the day because I may be back late because I was supposed to go to a rave last night, but I was just not in the mood to go to the rave. Like, when your intuition is saying one thing and then you want to do another thing. So my intuition was saying like you should rest and relax and just kind of like stay in because this is what your body needs right now. And then like I really wanted to go to this rave though. So but I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna listen to myself. And I will say like I just kind of sat outside. I wrote some music. Um but it was almost like it was literally about this topic like personal development and growth and leading up to my Saturn return just because like a rebirth process and just kind of really thinking about where I want to go and what life is all about. um and I was just so grateful honestly that I stayed in because I wouldn't have had the answers come to me if I went out and literally partied and maybe did some stuff, but like but I was just really grateful to stay in and like I stayed in for a few hours and then I watched Bob's Burgers and then I went upstairs to my altar and was just like talking to spirit and I was like, I'm so grateful that I did not go out tonight. And I know that I keep saying that, but just allowing my body to rest and to listen to myself, um, and just like journal.
Yeah. We
How
thought that there. Rest is resistance. Sometimes you just have to rest instead of like the outwardly doing.
what
That's
did you
funny.
do for the oh, go ahead.
No, I feel like I had a similar experience. I actually had no plans, but in terms of like I had a whole kind of like plan for my day in terms of what I was gonna do at home. So I was like, I'm gonna do an hour of yoga. I'm gonna practice pole. I'm gonna go on a really long walk and hit all my steps. I'm gonna get all my homework done. I'm gonna work on like I literally just had this entire day because my boyfriend is out of town and I was just like, I'm gonna take advantage of this time to just like really focus on myself. And instead of doing all of that, I actually laid in bed literally the entire day.
Mm.
Like, the entire day I laid in bed. And but honestly, I'm not even frustrated with myself because I think I just really needed that opportunity to just like reset. I am on my moon cycle right now, so I really needed to just kind of like chill out and do nothing. The only thing I did was edit one of our last episodes in bed, in bed, and I took a 3 hour nap, but they were like two, so it was like an hour and a half, one nap in the earlier afternoon, and then another hour and a half nap in the later afternoon. But I really needed that. And then today I did, during my prayers, I did a tarot reading about like what the message for me is during this full moon. And the cards that I pulled were the star, which is love her. That's my like astrologically linked sign because it like represents Aquarius. So I was like, okay, the star was the main one. I got the Page of Cups, and then I got the next two were like to be read in conjunction with each other. So I got the High Priestess reversed, and then the Magician. So they were like to be read together. And then the basically what I the message was just like I'm using my tools and talents in service to humanity. Like I am following that kind of like higher path, that higher purpose. I'm also kind of like in this realm. I feel like the Page of Cups represented you, to be honest, like because it could be like an influence or like a person. And I feel like it represented your energy of being like creative, but like also kind of like in tune with your emotions. But it is this kind of like energy of like there's a spiritual core, but it's like I think the suit is earth in water. So just kind of like a grounding force that is still focused on creativity, the collective unconscious, that kind of like energy. It's a youthful kind of energy.
Mm.
And then the High Priestess reverse and the Magician. I was really confused about it at first, but So I think that I am somebody who is just so hermit coded. Like I can just like literally just go nonverbal for months and like not talk to anybody and just like really because I feel I'm just like so fulfilled by being able to stay home and focus just like on my own stuff, like being able to stay home and do yoga and pray and journal. Like I could do that every single day for months, which is what I've been doing for like the last 3 years. It's just like being by myself. So then reading it as reversed with the magician, the message was like, okay, yes, you can still prioritize your spiritual journey, but find balance with the outward manifestations of your life. So don't just like put all your energy into cultivating this deeper connection with spirit because you already have it. It's like that
Right.
is so like find more of a balance, especially with this like full moon in Libra. It's all about balance and harmony. How can I bring more of this energy, this focus that I'm putting into the spiritual, into the physical, into like the creative projects, into just like the physical manifestations of my desires? How can I bring them more into being, more into like actualization through like conscious effort? So just finding that balance between like the physical and the spiritual. So it was a wonderful message. I just like, oh, love it.
Yeah. No, I love that because that's a really big thing, like finding that balance between like the physical and the spiritual. Like we're obviously going to get into that like with this like this topic in general for this episode, excuse me. But it's funny how you were like, I think you was it the Page of Cups that you pulled? That's so interesting because like we are very similar, but also very different in ways. Just like I think you have a very grounded energy in a very different way that I have a grounded energy, if that makes sense. It's just like you're very grounded with your routine, like with your structure and things like that. And that was something that I had to learn over time. And that's just something that very much comes naturally to you. And that is something that I admire because I'm like, I need this. Because sometimes, like, I love exploring, I love learning, but sometimes I can escape the physical reality, not as a form of escapism, to like escape everyday life, but as a way because I love learning and I love to discover things and uncover things and explore. So like spirituality is a way that helps like ground and root me in the like physical reality as well, while also being in touch with my intuition and that intuitive side. Um, and it doesn't like have to be overcomplicated, but um, yeah, when you sent me like well the episode like I was literally just about to say what you put into the thing. But, bro, when I edited the very first episode, I was like cracking up. I was like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be doing like funny freaking edits.
Yeah.
And um it just like brings like at least it brings me a lot of joy. I don't, if it doesn't bring you a lot of joy too.
It does. Like I was giggling so much at the podcast yesterday. I made my boyfriend come over and like look at like the different like edits that I had put in and stuff like that. But yeah, and I think it's just like interesting because even in like the last tarot reading that we I had, you were also I had pulled a card that didn't really understand exactly like what it meant. And then it ended up being like representing your energy. And yeah, and I literally pulled that card for you, or like you pulled that card when we were on the phone doing a tarot reading after we recorded, and you pulled the exact same card.
Was
But
it
I
Ace? Yeah.
it was
Ace of
the
Cups.
no ten of swords or nine of ten of swords.
Um,
Yeah.
there are
So
there are a few that frequently come out.
yeah, but I just thought it was funny because I guess you're like a major influence in my life. And just like, but it's like it's a good influence, it's a positive influence. I think that you bring a lot of like that youthful kind of like air sign quality, but also you're someone who is very in touch with your emotions, and I think that I'm somebody who I don't really feel my emotions. like I feel like I literally have to schedule cries for myself, not in like a weird detached way, but just in the sense of like I can like analyze. I'll analyze my feelings or like the situations to the point where I'm just kind of like not allowing myself to just feel it and just like yeah. So I feel like your influence in my life is allowing me to really kind of like be more in tune with my emotions, but in a playful way that isn't just like I need to feel this stuff so I can cry and just really feel everything. And it's more of like okay, well like I can experience the highs and the lows and have it just be like this process that is ultimately a good one. Like it's joyous to be able to feel like the highs and the lows.
Right. And I'm not gonna lie, like intellectualizing the emotion, like that is something like trying to unlearn that, like the intellectualizing of the emotions can feel sometimes very difficult. But once you kind of start to get the hang of it, it's like all going back to it's not that serious. And I do frequently think it was something that I learned is that people who, I don't know if I mentioned this in the first episode, but like, I believe people who are also neurodivergent have a tendency to intellectualize their emotions too, because the way that they process information and yeah, processing and absorb information is like it's very easy to go to the head. But
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually right.
No, that's true. No, that's
Is
true.
that?
But like intellectualizing something that is very like head logic like ruled versus like feeling it is really allowing it to kind of come down into your heart and actually, feeling it, feeling the emotion, feeling the struggles, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
There was something that just came to mind and like I lost that little train of thought, but hopefully it'll come back to me.
it's so
But I
hard.
think it's a good time to transition into the episode itself. So like I said before, we entitled this episode Spirituality, a Tool for Personal Development and Transformation. So we really want to get into how you can use spirituality as a tool, like as this means of being able to kind of like organize your life around and have it be something that is helpful and allows you to navigate life's challenges in a very integrated way.
Embodied.
Embodied. I like that
I
word.
think that, yeah, a lot of this work, to add just quick, like briefly, it's as I said before, like embodied work because you can learn all this stuff. You can learn and really get into the nitty-gritty of spirituality and wanting to uncover truths and everything and all that jazz. But it's really about embodying, it's important to embody the work in order to see progress in your life as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah. And something just to add on to that, it's like also don't get frustrated if it's like you don't feel like you're able to embody it because I think that before you can reach the embodiment of it, it's like you have to learn about it. Like you're learning kind of like the tools and the technical terms and stuff like that. And it's through practice that you're able to kind of make that jump. I think embodiment is both like practice and faith together. And like you're able to kind of like make that leap so that you are kind of more in a state of integrating with spirit. So yeah, like embodiment, it just like I think it comes with time, I don't think it's something that you can just kind of like jump into like that. It is something that is a practice in itself.
Right. And there are times, like, even if you do embody the work, sometimes you're not always going to feel that you're embodying it as
Yeah.
well. So you can, like, grasp it and you're like, oh, shit, I got the hang of this. And then all of a sudden, you're back to intellectualizing and resorting back to old patterns or behaviors. Like, that's completely normal. Not even just throughout, like, the spiritual journey, but just, like, throughout life. So at the end of the day, give yourself grace. We're human. We're moving forward. It's just like new information is just presented to us. You can embody the work, but you can still also resort back to old behaviors and be like, hey, this is, and then you can recognize it and be like, all right, let's go back to embodiment.
Yeah, but I think that's like also that goes to show just like the cyclical nature of everything, especially with spirituality. It's like you're literally in a spiral, and it's like you kind of like will repeat the same patterns and behaviors, and all of that exists in a way for that you so that you can go deeper with it. I think that like I reached a point where I was just like, oh God, like I'm so spiritual, you know what I mean? Like I'm so in touch with spirit, and then like wasn't. Now like I'm back in this.
You feel like you're starting to go downhill. You're like, shit, I did everything wrong. And it's like, and then you get back to the high again and you're like, no, wait, I was just navigating this transition in my life.
Like that meme, it's like we're so back. Oh, it's so over. Like, oh, we're so back. Oh, it's so. It's like it's literally that. Like
It's,
literally that.
have you seen the meme of like Miley Cyrus? It's like it's her smiling like, and it's the fire, the flames of the house in the background. It's like me on my healing journey.
All right. So now back to the main topic at hand. So I really wanted to kind of just like define the two terms that we'll be really talking about. So spirituality. So spirituality to me, in the way that I see it, is like it's this core ether energy. It's the container, the belief in something greater without specific definition, the broad spectrum and intersections of faith. So it's not just like this, like a specific lineage. Like if you're religious, maybe it is like, following a specific religion or following a certain faith path. But the way that I see spirituality is just kind of like this, like broad, like literally like we're in the sphere. This is the spirituality sphere. And then with personal development, the way that I see it is the continual growth and evolution, shape shifting, trying on of different identities, personal navigation, and then the building upon foundation.
I love, well, going back to what you said about spirituality, when you said the container, for whatever reason, that kind of reminded me of like obviously the vessel, but and also like our heart chakra, because our heart chakra is kind of like that middleman. It's the connector between like our upper three chakras and our lower three chakras. And it's about like giving and receiving love. And it's like obviously I'm not saying that spirituality is about the chakras like specifically, but what I am saying is just like a large part of this work is also that heart space and like growing and expanding. And I would also even say of like coming back to yourself, if that makes sense. I think I'm going on a tangent right now, but I just wanted to bring up specifically the heart chakra because the container part reminded me of that.
But it's funny because it's like in terms of the heart chakra, that I feel like that's just a different term that's used in like all spiritual practices. Like I feel like with Christianity or like Catholicism in general, it's all about like devotion and compassion. I mean, that's all like heart chakra energy. Even like well, like in yoga and stuff, the entire point of it is to like open up your heart chakra and like you're doing all of this so that it's like all the energy is in alignment with each other. But a lot big part of that is being able to open the heart space so that the energy can flow unhindered to throughout the crown of your chakra, out through your crown chakra. So it is just again like whatever faith you follow or anything like that, just like use like the language that resonates with you. But yeah, I think spirituality at the core of it, it really is about being able to open the heart space and ultimately just developing greater compassion, empathy, and patience.
Yeah, like leading with that heart space and like navigating life in general, like whatever it is that you do in life, it's like leading with that heart space and having that trust and that faith that whether you believe in a higher power or whether you just believe that things are working out in your favor, when you really hold that belief and idea, you can experience so much, um,
Yeah.
like so much love and so much gratitude. And I was on Instagram the other day and I saw this little snippet of an interview that Dolly Parton was talking about spirituality.
I love Dolly Parton.
She like and she holds like also so much wisdom sometimes when she speaks. You know when people talk and you're like, oh, that person like they carry so much with them. That's like she said basically to summarize what she said, I wrote it down, is she said like spirituality doesn't have to be also this whole thing. I think sometimes people overcomplicate it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like even there were times when I overcomplicated it, going back to like wanting to learn so much. It was like, you don't need to overcomplicate this. It's she said it's simply about just like being and experiencing like life in general too. And to add on to that, it's about like coming back to ourselves and our truth, like our faith, the faith in ourselves, and as you would say, like communing with our inner God. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I just thought, like when I heard that, I was like, oh wow. I was like, I'm gonna like this read.
Bars by Dolly Parton.
Bars by Dolly Parton.
Um, that makes me think of how, again, like going back to just like your heart chakra, like the opening of the heart chakra really is just like the foundational work for spirituality because like you were saying, like you can learn so many different like things, like however you can kind of like get drawn back into like the head, like getting into the logic and stuff. And like that's not really like, yes, learning is so awesome and amazing and great. And if that's just like the way that you operate, okay, go for it. But however, like Dolly Parton says, you don't have to overcomplicate it. It can just be in the actual experience. And I think for me, the way that I see it is like the heart chakra is the experience of being able to come fully into the present. And going back to what you had said earlier about like in terms of like trust and like surrender to the universe, that in itself is a mode through the heart chakra because trust requires faith, but faith without fear, and like trust that like there is like this like almost divine love, like God, the universe, whatever language that you use is there to support you and throughout like in creating like the life of your dreams or in just like creating like a safe environment for you to prosper and thrive.
Yeah. That's honestly, now that you say that, that's what I thought about during the full moon in Libra yesterday. That's what was coming through to me. I was like, all these things that like I wanted to do, I'm like, those were things that I wanted to do at that time in my life. But now, not that I was always like I feel like I've been very goal driven, but the whole part of life is also about experiencing. Like, yes, I still want to go after my goals, but I still want to experience the world and explore and travel and do the things that make me happy because that's what fulfills me and like expands like to give and also receive love. And circle moment, Dolly Parton, full moon in Libra, and then I forgot what my other thing was.
Just like okay, like that as you were speaking, the image of like kind of like I don't know, like the metaphor of like building a house. So like say if you want to reach your goals, but your focus is just like about the achievement of those goals and like trying to get there as fast as possible. It's like when you quickly build a house, it's like sometimes you'll build it shittily, you know, like maybe like you're hammering nails into like the wrong space and like the foundation itself isn't strong. However, when you take your time, you can really build a foundation and you can even, you're allowing the universe to kind of like fill in the gaps. You know, like if you're allowing the universe to kind of like guide your vision versus trying to kind of like throttle forward with like this just one specific of like, oh, for example, like I want to be I want to have the best podcast ever. And then you're like putting out a bunch of shitty material because you didn't take your time with it
Yeah.
versus like you're allowing yourself to kind of like wait and like go along the process, but still being open to what the universe is trying to like give you. So then, for example, with this podcast, we both wanted to do this, but it took several years to actually come along. But then we were able to collaborate and bring this into what I think is a very fruitful endeavor. But because we made the time, the space to kind of like allow the universe to guide us in this creative collaboration.
Mhm. Well said, Joe. I
God,
love I love how your mind works. And I know like I tell you this like when you send me music on Spotify, I'm like, "Ugh, I want to kiss your third eye so bad right now."
oh my goodness, this
But
is like really gassing at my Aquarian ego right
I
now.
do like sometimes like I will text Joe and like I'll be like, oh my gosh. Like I know when I'm gonna send you a compliment, I'm like, this is totally gonna go to Joe's head right now. But and I'm like because I also think about like your boyfriend is obviously so gorgeous. And I think it's funny you brought up like when you slept over, I think a few months ago, you're like, when we go out sometimes, like everybody go everybody compliments him. And I was actually in bed thinking about this and I started laughing to myself, just like in the dark. So I'm like sitting here giggling in like no light. And I can just see you like somebody compliments your boyfriend, and you just roll your eyes and you're like this. All right, guys, when is it my turn?
God, I really want like I really want the audience to know I love my boyfriend so much. Okay. This is not like some like inner resentment or whatever. It's just that my boyfriend, he is a beautiful Leo man, very beautiful, gorgeous Leo man with just like such like open heart energy and amazing style. And when we go out, it's just that like obviously people compliment him because it's just like he has this like aura and he has really cool style and stuff like that. And me being the aqua that I am, it's like I want people to also compliment me for my super cool outfits and like being like, you know what I mean? So it's just funny because there have been like so many times where we've gone out and you know, like we're both dressed super fly, you know, it's like a date night or something, and like he'll get a compliment and then like I'm just standing there like waiting for my turn. And it's like
I just find the dynamic funny where it's like somebody goes and compliments your boyfriend.
boyfriend without talking to me. And
All going back to like what I was originally gonna say was like your intellect, and I really admire your intellect and how you articulate your words. And I'm just like, "Ugh, like Joe's so smart." And when you spent the night, my mom, like the next day, I think like when you left, she was like, Joe's really intelligent. So I
Uh,
feel like
I got Dana's approval.
and I just like I hope y'all know that like I will gas Joe up, but I'm like I know in the back of my head I'm like Joe's gonna eat this up right now.
It just it really is like so nice to be able to like kind of like have like a friend or like have like this kind of like a podcast where I can really just like I feel like showcase my skills, but not in like an ego way of like trying to like boost myself as like some intellectual because no, it's not that. It's just like I just have such genuine love for being able to share my ideas and my views of things. And like, I really feel like I am fulfilling my soul's purpose by being able to do this, which is why I am so grateful for this.
I don't think it's from like ego at all. I think a lot of people like Timothy Chalamet recently. This is just like
Oh,
to
his speech during the yeah,
yes. And I would people were getting offended and I was like, I don't think that that's offensive. When you know what you have to offer and when you know your like worth and when you want to achieve something, when you're vocal about that, sometimes that pushes people like away
away.
from they feel uncomfortable and I think, oh, this is coming from a place of ego. I think you're really able to tell when something's coming from a place of ego versus like authenticity.
Yeah.
And whether it's like relationships, whether we're like romantic or platonic, whether in like in business partnerships, like when you know how you show up in the world and when you're confident like in who you are and like what you have to offer, like yeah, that might rub some people the wrong way, but that also does not mean that it's coming from a place of ego. Like he has a goal that he wants to achieve and like good for him. Like
Mhm.
full support. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't understand the people that are saying like, like
I feel like what I really took away from that speech is that like he is just committed to his craft. You know, I feel like what really came through was his love for the craft. It wasn't about like him wanting to be great. It's one he wanted to become so great at acting that he's able to kind of like channel this like I feel like a divine energy of being able to really like he is fulfilling his purpose as an actor by committing to his craft. And that's the way that I took it as. I love that speech.
and
I feel like I oh sorry.
no, I was gonna say we have less than a minute, but I was gonna say like we're also like committing like to the craft too, and I think like just in general, like as creatives, like it's so important to do that to commit to that, and then to see
Mhm.
how your life like plays out, so you can be
Yeah,
or expanding, like you know.
exactly. I will say though that like I feel like I never really got like the Timothy Chalamet hype. Like I think he's cute, you know, but I'm like he looks like a sickly like plague boy to me. So I never really kind of like got into like that hype. But after hearing that speech, I was just like, you know what? Damn, I'm like a fan now just because I just appreciate him being able to take that space and be like I am committing to my craft in such a way so that I can be called one of the greats, but not in an ego way, but just because of my love for the craft. So
Hmm.
what we love you, Timothy Chalamet. Like that was a beautiful speech, a well-deserved Oscar. I watched the movie. I watched the Bob Dylan movie. He did fantastic. Loved it.
Oh, I have not
But
seen.
now, getting back into the episode, I know that Desi has a quote they would like to share with us.
Yeah, so I was doing some research, like kind of like Joe mentioned, like you mentioned your thing. Was this your specific definition on spirituality, or was it like combination of
That was just like things that came to mind when I was thinking about, yeah.
okay. Because I to like to add on to that, like before this episode, I was doing some research and I was like, as of right now, who knows, in maybe like 5 minutes or so, I might have a more definitive definition. But there was this quote from Dr. Maya Spencer. She wrote, well, before I actually get into her quote to what she said, but it is consistent like with Buddha and his take on spirituality and his teaching. So like at the beginning of my journey, I did follow a lot of Buddhist practices and I still do incorporate them into my practice. However, moving on to Dr. Spencer's quote, she said, spirituality is the indefinable urge to reach beyond the limits of ordinary human existence that is bounded by unconscious forces and self interest, and to discover higher values in ourselves and to live them consistently in our relationships and roles. It involves developing practices that aid us in rising and expanding, emphasis on that, perhaps beyond the merely good to the transcendent, in the process of looking inwards rather than outwards for our own morality and guidance. Above all, it means becoming a more loving and compassionate human being in thought, word, and deed. And when I saw this, I was like, what? like these three sentences were so profound, and I was like, should I just mention one sentence, another sentence? But there were parts in each of like the sentence where I were like was like, yes.
Yeah.
One of the I was like, yes. And a few of the things were looking inwards rather than outwards. And also at the very end, becoming a more loving and compassionate human being. Um, Also discovering higher values in ourselves and to live them consistently in our relationships and roles. And
Mhm.
it's just like everything that she said, it to me, I just resonated with it.
Yeah. I like that line where it says, that is bounded by unconscious forces and self-interest, because that to me, another way to say that would be like the intersection between the self and spirit. So
Mm.
just understanding that like there is like this way of like being able to kind of like existing in that intersection between two. And I think that's what spirituality is about being able to honor that kind of that intersection, that merging between self and spirit. And
Mhm.
then also, like you had said, that line about looking inwards rather than outwards for our own morality and guidance. I love that line because I think spirituality is such a way to be able to kind of define your own compass. It's like, okay, maybe Christianity morals don't really like appeal to you. You don't really like kind of like take it all, but you're able to redefine it on your own terms. And I really think that's like what I love about this kind of like new age spiritualism that is, like kind of like woo spirituality, but being able to kind of like take practices and principles from, maybe different faith modes or modalities and like being able to incorporate them into your own personal faith and practice.
Right.
Like a couple, like how you said your spiritual journey started out with like following Buddhist principles. For me, it's just like I have still I honor some of like my Catholic upbringing, but I also like really like like with like the Bhagavad Gita and like following some like Hindu and like kind of like Eastern practices and beliefs, like my belief in the chakra systems.
Mm.
Also just like Christian core values. Like I feel like my faith is really is, like I had said earlier, just like all these different intersections, but that
Yes.
comes to a point where it's just like it's all based in like faith and love. And that's like the center of it all.
That's really, I want to add to that really quick. Like when I talk to people, like back when I used to work at the office, I would have conversations with people that were like Christian, Catholic, and even if, let's say, they didn't agree with like and this is like a specific topic, but like they didn't agree with people that were queer, we were able to like have conversations just like rooted in acceptance and unconditional love, where it was like, I have so much love for this person that I'm talking to right now that even if we don't even also like agree on things, like I'm right. And the reason why I bring this up is like the root, as you said, of is like unconditional love and like taking like another side tangent, but like taking bits and pieces of um like different religions or different cultures and incorporating them into your own practice and what works best for you. It's just like and honoring that, it's such a beautiful thing. And this heavily ties in not just to like spirituality, but into also our tool for personal development and self-growth. And so I find it beautiful that you honor um and that you incorporate practices from your upbringing like Catholicism, and then you like Eastern practices as well. And it's like a whole part of life is like, yeah, things change and we can add or take out practices into our rituals, into like our development. And that's just like, that's okay. That like we're not supposed to be one person. Like, sorry, this is just like a whole nother topic, but like we're just like multifaceted
That
individuals and
no,
incorporating.
and I think that's like one of like the benefits of like living in this like digital age is that like for example, you don't have to go to a monastery, to follow like the traditional Eastern practices, and you don't have to like fully commit to like being, oh, I forgot the term. It's like on the tip of my tongue, but basically being where like you live by yourself and you don't partake in like sex or alcohol or like processed foods. It's like you're able to kind of like take, I feel like, the energetic principles behind the practice and incorporate that into your spiritual journey versus having to follow exactly what maybe people hundreds of years ago did in order to achieve the same results. You know what I mean? It's like you can pick and choose, and allowing that to kind of like guide your decision versus having to follow like step by step the traditional way of doing things. And really quickly, I wanted to touch on how you had said about like you were able to speak to the people who may not have agreed with like people being queer or like but still find like this place of like understanding and compassion at the core of it. And it reminds me of like what Ram Dass says in Be Here Now, and he has like a page dedicated to like how polarities exist for a reason. That is like one of like the foundational energies of the universe. So it's like you have beauty and you have chaos, you have birth and you have destruction, and polarities exist just in the fact that like that's just how energy operates. Like that law of physics of like for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, and that's exactly what it is. And rather than kind of like maybe getting down to like this kind of like more physical level of like, oh, there isn't an understanding between that, being able to maybe go into like the spiritual, maybe like a higher perspective of like, okay, like we may not agree on like the same beliefs or same values, but I can still hold space for the fact that they are human. We are here at the same time. We have different journeys and understandings, but being able to always find a path back to love, back to
I Yeah, I just got chills when you said that because that's honestly how it feels. And obviously there's different layers to it. Like obviously if I encountered somebody that was being very aggressive towards me, I wouldn't like that. I would be afraid, right? But there also are people out there, like in general, not everybody's going to agree with you in life, and that's okay. And like even though I may not agree with you with not agreeing with me, like I can still sit here and be like, I'm not trying to convince you otherwise, like from because I'm leading, I'm not choosing love. I'm trying to like convince you to see differently, and I'm not going to try and do that.
yeah.
Um,
Like honestly, that's also not your job.
no, it's not my job.
Yeah.
And like that's just the way that I view things. Now, like I said, if somebody's going to continuously ask me questions why I feel the way that I do about something, I'm like, look, I'm starting to kind of get annoyed because you keep wanting to psychoanalyze like my sexuality and all this, and when I give you an answer, you're still not going to agree with it. So why are you wasting your breath and I'm not going to waste mine, you know? But you
Um,
talked about polarity. And on this topic of spirituality and a tool for personal development and transformation, it's like going back to the open heart to polarity. It's like you get to witness and accept like all versions of yourself, like the good, the parts of yourself that you seem that are bad or ugly. And in reality, they're not bad or ugly. They can just like represent shadow aspects of yourself. But this is like what transformation is all about. And like the spiritual journey and is not love and light. It's about like I think that's another thing that we need to get into, but it's not about love and light. It's about um like embracing all these versions of yourself, the parts of you that experience a lot of joy, but the parts of you that experience a lot of sadness and grief or anger. And like anger is a healthy emotion. And also like embracing the shadow. But that's like also a whole nother topic. But really the polarity, the dichotomy, um like two things exist at once and they're here for reasons. Like you have to sometimes also look within like that
mhm.
darkness to find the light. And
Yeah.
that's just something so beautiful and empowering about that.
Mhm. I want to say is that like now that we're kind of like talking about it, I would love to have an episode more about, I feel like on the topic of like spiritual bypassing versus unconditional compassion, because that is something I have been thinking about so hard. I've been having like fake interviews in my head in the shower, like thinking about this certain topic because there are nuances to this conversation. I feel like even like cancel culture comes into it, political activism. Like there is like this whole, I really would love to get into this topic. And I'm glad you brought it to mind because I will make that in like the show notes to design a future episode just all about that.
Mm.
I'd love to get more into it because I have so many thoughts on the topic. But I
Yeah.
think it's a good time to kind of mention my quote that I have from Ram Dass about all of this, kind of like in the same energy of what we're speaking about. So the quotes it says, I have, this is from his book, Grist for the Mill. I am a being going to God. You find your way through this incarnation, and each of us has a different path through. No path is any better than any other path. They are just different. You must honor your own path.
Mm.
Um, and then you work with the karma that exists in your life space. It is all grist for the mill. Like the last part is just like a conscious being does all he can to create a space for going to God, but he does no violence to the existing karma to do it. You exist as a statement of your own level of evolution, and you are available to any human being to provide that what they need to the extent that they ask. And I feel like this quote kind of like sums up what we're talking about. Like maybe you don't really personally agree with another person's opinions, or you have different values or beliefs, but okay, like sure, yeah, like that exists, but then like can you go to a space of just like accepting them for who they are? And like again, like when he says like without without causing harm or violence to the existing karma, it's like how can you come to this situation with love? You know, like how can you be like, all right, like I don't agree with you, but I do love you, and the fact that you are another human being and we are here together in this lifetime, and how can I just be this like this vessel of love, you know, of being of understanding versus kind of like getting pulled down to like the human theatrics of like, well, you don't support my views and beliefs, which means I don't support you and your beliefs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I perfectly said. No words. I don't have anything to add to
I
that.
left you speechless.
Yeah, yeah, no, because I think that it does encapsulate. Is that a good word? Like everything that we kind of um talked about. And yeah, I don't have any words to add on to that.
Awesome. So I think that's a good way to transition to our next point of like how the connection between spirituality and personal growth. So basically how spirituality can be both the foundation and the path for spiritual growth. And an example that I have that came to mind immediately was like alcohol anonymous prayers, which is like being able to surrender to something greater for the power to change the situation. So like the prayer goes, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So with that being said, it's like taking it out of the context of like, you know, like alcoholism and stuff, because I can't speak on that. I'm not a doctor. But just in the fact that like, you know, building a new home requires vision, trust, and maintenance, you know, like the growing and pruning, focusing attention to what expands us, that keeps us in flow and allows us to stay loose, steady, and committed to a practice of devotion. You know, that does require courage, you know, like being able to be honest with yourself about like, okay, maybe things aren't going exactly the way that I need or the way that I want, but then having the determination and like the courage to choose a different to choose something different, you know, because it's like if you're stuck in the same pattern, you're gonna get the same results.
It that quote that where you were saying accepting the things like that I cannot change and the courage to change the things that I can. It reminds me of like I don't know if at the start of your like spiritual journey, and I don't know if we talked about this in the first episode, but it's like it allows us like to ask ourselves the deeper questions about ourselves and our past and where we want to be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like we all have choice, we all have free will, and we have the option to do things differently when information intuitively or uh, verbally is presented to us. And that's like you get to choose the way that you live your life. And I'm not saying like obviously once again, I'm not talking about alcoholism and like obviously like yeah, you have a choice, but like then again, I'm not a doctor, and there's behind everything an addiction. Like it's a very difficult thing to overcome. But I'm talking about like minus take out the alcoholism, like have the ability to like um ask ourselves those deeper questions and really be like, well, where can I make this change? Because I feel that this change is necessary for my life in order to become this next version of myself that I'm feeling. And I'm ready to grow into that and like and expand.
I feel like it's low key shadow work. I feel like that prayer is like low key shadow work because I think like the best thing you can ever do with yourself is just be honest, you know, like be honest with yourself about the bad. For example, I am somebody who is incredibly inconsistent. I think I was somebody who in the past, I have been toxic. I've been a bad friend. I've been, you know what I mean? I made poor choices and like the ability to kind of like change your situation is to be like, okay, well, you know what? I'm tired of acting in this way. I'm tired of like kind of having the same results. But to take personal responsibility, to be fully accountable and to take the action, that is where like that the gap lies between your old reality and like your desired reality. It's through accountability and through action. And like
Yeah.
that in itself, shadow work is like being able to be honest about the bad in order to make change for the good.
Right. And I think just to quickly touch on that topic, like acknowledging the bad, like when you feel bad about yourself or like shame in general, sometimes it can feel like so like, oh, the world is like, I'm feeling so vulnerable and exposed, but um, like, oh my goodness, like this is a whole nother episode topic as well that we literally have, but I like you get to learn from your shame, you get to learn from
Mhm.
patterns and behaviors, and there's something so empowering when you can be like, this was like, yeah, you're like, yeah, I may have done this in the past and I can hold space for this version of myself and not knock myself down. That doesn't mean that I'm a bad person per se, but I'm learning and I'm growing. And as long as you take like personal accountability and responsibility and want to choose to do differently, that's what the most important thing is. Because at the end of the day, when you take accountability and responsibility for that, like even if somebody says like, "Oh, you did this, this, and this," you can be like, "Yeah, but like if you're gonna sit here and then put me in this box to continue to do that, like I'm changing, I'm growing, and yeah, you're like you said, if you've been a bad friend or like et cetera, there's like everybody has the opportunity to change. Like
Exactly.
you don't need to put yourself in a box and be like, well, this is who I am because I did this.
Mhm.
Like life is about experiencing. You go through shit, you find out shit you don't want to find out, whether it's about other people or whether it's about yourself, and you learn and you grow.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And I think like living the digital in the digital age and like especially with like the social media and stuff like that, it's almost kind of like with this process of maybe comparing yourself to others or comparing your life and like kind of being on like this public platform, you feel like this need to be perfect and to be, like this best version of yourself all the time. But then it's like if we were literally, if we were born perfect, then we wouldn't have to be in the entire point of coming to earth of like living out this life is to make mistakes so that you can grow from them. And like something that I was really thinking on, because again, like this is something that I'm a topic I'm incredibly passionate about, is like rather than viewing life as this process, rather than viewing life as one of condemnation, of being like sentenced here, why not see it as one of celebration? Like, why not be like, oh, fuck yes, I got to make a mistake and I got to learn from it and I got to grow from it? And it's like what Deepak Chopra always talks about in his like 7 spiritual laws for success is like, look for the seed of opportunity in every situation, whether it's positive or negative, and learn from it.
Yeah. And you have the ability, like Joe and I already like know this, but to the listeners out there that struggle with this, like I won't speak for you, Joe, but like I understand where you come from, where you're like when sometimes when it feels like, oh, it's the end of the world and like things like that. And I think naturally when we go through also experiences in life where we're like where we feel really bogged down, like in general, I would say I'm a pretty optimistic person.
Mm-hmm.
And like nothing's ever really gonna stop me, but sometimes my mind can get the best of me and like, oh my gosh, I promise there was a point where I was getting out with this. But it's like viewing like your mistakes as a way and reminding yourself like that you're human. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you're not here to be perfect. Um, and like showing up, whether it's like on the internet or just like in public, whatever, whether you have a platform or not, you don't need to be perfect. It's really it's just about like my thing is like embracing like every single version of yourself. That's something that one of the things that I'm very passionate about talking about the shadow, and it's like going back to not everything's like love and light, but like you get to choose how you live your life. And if you want to live a life of abundance and happiness, it's important to reframe like your mindset and like be in that like develop gratitude practices in order to feel fulfilled because external things are not going to fulfill you. They can temporarily, but it's really about how you feel internally about yourself, about the world. If you have a negative outlook about the world,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be easier to focus on the negative.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So this just made me think of a video that I had seen on Instagram that I actually saved, and it's about William Defoe talking about how he loves this concept of trying to fail. It's like allow yourself to make a bad painting, to like do a bad performance of something, but really it puts perfection out the window and allows yourself just kind of like the freedom to explore and be curious, which I think is the principle of like any like of spirituality itself is like be curious, like allow yourself to be open and open to the experience and allowing everything to be this portal to knowing yourself better. So even in like very like tough situations, like I suffered from depression and mental illness in my teen years especially, and like I thought it was like the end of the world for several years, and then coming to a space now where I'm now 27. I'm, just the happiest and like I feel like most grounded that I ever have been. And like things get easier. I was able to learn from that time and allow it to be something that's like part of myself, to like the shadow aspect of something that I carry with me, but I'm not allowing it to be like the one definition of who I am. It's like I'm allowed to be happy. You're allowed to grow and evolve. You're allowed to experience lightness and wonder and awe. You don't have to stick to the script of everything is terrible all the time.
Mm. But also, so I do sometimes think it's important to experience like that feeling of like terribleness, that anger, like and all that stuff in order to get to like
Yeah.
that is also essentially what you're saying. Like we're not saying like, oh, snap out of your like depressive episode, but it's like sometimes these
The
things.
polarity. Yeah. And I feel like again, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I feel like the way that I see it now is like, okay, anytime like I had all those like really negative years and now I have all these really beautiful years. If I have a really shitty bad day, I know that the next day is going to be wonderful and amazing, or like vice versa. Like being able to go with like the highs and lows, the ebbs and flow of life, but with this deep trust in, like in God, in the universe and spirit, that ultimately everything is okay. Everything is beautiful and wonderful when you allow yourself to really like feel that. Even when I'm like having a shitty bad day, I'm just like, oh, okay, at least I can learn from this. God. You know what I mean?
I always remind myself like ugh, everything is like temporary and I'm like I'm experiencing this is okay and I know at the end of this like I'm gonna feel better and I think that's something that obviously like also helps pushes me through. I think like when I was like now like reflecting back when I was like depressed at certain points in my life when I was younger in my teen years, I was also like having the time of my life. Does that make sense? So
I
like
get
fifth grade, I mean, I think we kind of talked about it. Like I was like in a behavioral hospital for like fifth grade. But like but I also had really good memories, but also like I don't know why I was in there, but like I met like so many people and I was just like going through certain things at that time in my life, but I was also like having the time of my life and very happy. So it's like having those two existing things at once. It's very interesting to like reflect and look back on things, you
yeah,
know?
like I was literally in the mental hospital when I was in like college, like back in like oh God, I must have been like 1920, one of those. And yeah, like it was like the worst depressive episode of my entire life, but it was also the time where I fell in love for the first time. And it's like again, like that beautiful experience of like experiencing this like horrible negative side of like mental illness, but like also like really deeply falling in love with someone who was a Pisces.
Wow. Wait, what age were you in? I was like 10, but like,
Like in my late, I want to say I was between the ages of 19 and 21. I can't remember off the top of my head. It wasn't that entire time. It was like I was either 19, 20, or 21.
no. Yeah, I get it. Like for example, like for me, like I was 10. They were trying to figure out like what was going on, like whether it was like learning differences, if I had ADHD. And so I was just like in there for 2 weeks. But I remember at the beginning I was like, please don't put me in here. Like I'm not like ready to do this. Um, and obviously like as an adult looking back now, like I can recognize my fear of like going into something that I was unfamiliar with because I was
Mhm.
not ready. But I learned a lot. Like I learned I don't know if I'm able to say this, but I learned how to do like graffiti letters from this one kid. But he
Why would
really,
you be allowed to say that?
am I not allowed to say that?
No, you're allowed to. I'm like, what?
Okay, I'm like, I don't think that's HIPAA. Like, I don't even remember his name.
Yeah, you're not revealing his identity.
No, but there was just like, but yeah.
Okay, wait. Side note is very side note. I remember when I went to the mental hospital, there was like this guy in there who was in there, like it was like rehab, and he literally snuggled in a vial of acid up his ass. And like
That's
It was crazy. It was literally just like it was like the drama because like everybody was like, you need to get rid of that. Like we're all gonna get in trouble and stuff like that. And he's just like, what the fuck? Like, can you guys chill? And it's like, bro, you're literally not allowed to have this is a rehab facility. You cannot have that in there.
um,
Anyways, back to our main topic. I mean, we've already touched on this in the fact that spirituality is an alchemical tool to be used for inner transformation, growth, and development. And how that we can use spiritual principles in a similar way to guide and inform our reality. So yeah, I already said this quote. Like we already touched on this, about the fact that like we choose. I am someone who believes in that the fact that we do choose to come to Earth. You know, I think that like if you're looking at like our souls and like that kind of energy, I really do believe that it's like we choose to come out here to Earth to live out our karmic journeys for the process of like helping the collective. I really do very foundationally believe in that. Um, and we also touched on this in the fact that assuming responsibility for our very existence, as well as the existence of those who surround us, allows us to take responsibility for our lives, placing intention behind our day to day actions.
mhm.
So, what we can do with ourselves, focusing on our personal karmic work, which in turn helps the collective, refraining from judgment for the way other people live their lives, and instead holding space for the multitude of paths that exist for all.
I Yeah, maybe we can talk about I know that we talked about this in our in the I believe part briefly talked about it in our intro episode, but like personal stories of how like spirituality has impacted like development. So I know that we mentioned this briefly about like the start of our spiritual journeys. Um but and like I think like for me it happened really around like 19 years old, but I would say like overall spirituality has helped like grounded me and helped me evolve in ways that I've never expected. So like asking myself like those deeper questions when things would present themselves intuitively to me, I was like, I can't act in these ways anymore that used to serve me. um and so a lot of it at the beginning for me was like shadow work, um meditation, and I found just um like at this point in my life, I've never not liked nature, but I'm very like connected to water and being outdoors, and it just helps ground me and root me as nature does. It grounds and roots people, but um like I don't know, like I get to choose to live a life of gratitude. I get to choose to act from a place of love.
Get it exactly. Like I would say, like before I really started. Oh, sorry. What were
I
you
would
gonna
say
say?
like also like incorporating like Eastern practices. I know that I said that I started off with like Buddhist practices, but I have like Eastern practices. So I like freaking Reiki now, adding to my toolbox. I don't use it every day though, but um there's there's just so much overall helps grounded me and rooted me. Um grounding in ways, like I said, that I've never really expected. But I'm so grateful for everything that I've learned and everything that I've gone through to be the person to who I am today and the person that I'm still becoming. Uh, yeah.
Hmm. Oh, my beautiful, wonderful Desi.
Oh, I was gonna say, really quick a quote that I wrote, or something from my journal. And I know that I shared this with you before, but I wrote on the topic of like evolution. I wrote, knowing that I do not have to face this journey alone, before bringing in the new, I have to let go of the old, making room for what is to come and to make room for myself, a new version of me once again. And so I always value like development and these tower moments in life because I'm like on
Mhm.
the other side of that. I'm going to come out stronger. And that's the way that I personally view, at least for my life. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Well said. I'll say in the way that for me, I really kind of like I want to say discovered spirituality after like the worst like period of my life. You know, like I went to the mental hospital. I was really struggling with depression and anxiety and just kind of like understanding like what is the point of all this? What is the point of being here? So for
Mm,
me, like spirituality was a way of like discovering my purpose, you know, like it gave me a purpose in terms of like living out my day to day. Like the more that I learned, the more it kind of like just like expanded my sense of awareness and understanding like how important it is to live a life that is mindful, that is heart centered in the ways that it honors the collective, in the way that it honors all of us. It honors and being in service to humanity. Like that's so important. Like I'm just a one small little cog in the machine that is the universe, but my work is as equally as important as anybody else's. So yeah, like I think
I
like
s- Forget what I said. I'm like, I second that, Jo. That was with all of what I was trying to say. Jo once again perfectly articulated. And this is what I mean by like the grounding of your presence. Like you just
Mhm.
have, it's like you have a thought, straight line. For me, it's like
I feel like for me, spirituality was in the way, like bringing back to the Alcoholic Anonymous. It's like, like being able to incorporate spiritual principles into your life is a trust and proven way of being able to find your purpose, of discovering your purpose. And again, like not in this ego way of like, I am just like the change that's going to be like, I'm going to be the person who brings about this like everlasting change. Everybody's going to know me because I'm so spiritual and so informed. It's like none of that. Just like you're a flower in a field, like you have a divine purpose in the fact that you are here, but your work is just as important, is just equally important as everybody else's. Every other flower, every other tree, every blade of grass. It's like we all add our unique talents to the collective, and like that in itself is the journey. And yeah, like so spirituality has been such a way of being able to understand my purpose, to guide and inform my reality in the way that I dedicate time in my day-to-day life. Like I love to do yoga, I love to meditate, I love to journal, and allowing these practices to be a way to know myself better and to also understand again like my greater purpose in like the grand scheme of it all. And yeah, I also just want to touch, I feel like journaling, I love journaling. Journaling has always been such a great tool for me, especially if you are somebody who is able to maybe intellectualize a difficult situation or difficult emotions. I think that, like, honestly, what more people need is journaling, and you don't have to pay a therapist. I think that, but that's not to say like therapy isn't a great tool. It's a wonderful tool, especially for people if you need kind of help asking those questions or understanding, a situation. But
wait, I will say though, the thing is because traditionally Western medicine is like focusing on like on CBT and traditional talk therapy. But when you
mhm,
incorporate like embodiment as far as like somatic practices, that's not even just journaling, but like somatic practices to bring yourself back into your body to feel the emotions.
mhm.
That's where it's like, and to also process trauma and stuff that maybe we've repressed. So that's the one thing that I will say, not just journaling and like I know you don't mean it like
Only journaling.
only journaling or like not having a therapist, but like I do think with people that are neurodivergent or people who tend to intellectualize their emotions, it is important then to find embodiment practices, such as somatics and tools to more
Mhm.
body-based to
Yeah,
be in uh, to help.
for sure. I will say that I started journaling much more uh like after I started doing yoga. I feel like before I was never journaling. When I started doing yoga, that's when I felt the need to kind of like more like chronicle my emotions and like the way that I was feeling, the things that were happening in my day-to-day life. Um, yeah, like I think like with yoga, for example, it's like I remember like the first time I did pigeon pose, just feeling that like energetic release. Like I started sobbing out of nowhere, and like anytime I like took a break from yoga and kind of got back into it, it was always those hip openers where I would feel this kind of just like energetic release of where I am crying and sobbing, but in the purpose of like releasing the energy that was built up there. And then I felt so much better afterwards. But yeah, like I love journaling because, like, for example, I love crash out journaling so much. So, like, say if I got into a really big fight with my boyfriend, a few weeks ago, and I literally just like left the house and took my journal with me and went to a park, and I was just there sitting at the park, writing delusionally in my journal. But that was like what I needed to be able to engage in this like kind of conflict resolution with my boyfriend. So instead of like entering a full-on fight argument with him, I took some space. I basically argued in my journal, like I was able to give truth to the reality of my feelings, to that anger, but in a healthy way where I'm not taking it out on somebody else, where I'm not, like Ram Dass had said, like I'm not I'm adding violence to the existing karma. Instead, I'm like taking the responsibility to handle my emotions in a way that I can come back to my boyfriend. Because afterwards, literally, like after I crashed out, I was just like, but I do love him and I want to make this relationship work. So then I went back and we were able to talk it out and had like a rest of a lovey-dovey weekend.
That's
But
that's very healthy, and I'm very glad that you did that because it like being able to self-regulate and know when you're getting amped up and like when you're both, whether it's like you guys were arguing like back and forth, but that's such a powerful tool that many people sometimes, I don't even want to say they fail to realize, but people can go like at each other like, and you're trying to get your points across, but it's like no, you need to take that step back in order to really process and the fact that um like journaling, yes, absolutely does help. You're like, you just need to sail the shit out on paper and just like get it out. And then like, okay, I'm like cool, calm, collected. Now I
yeah,
can like it's like conflict resolution. You're able
yeah.
to talk about it in a way where you guys are both calm, like
Mhm.
wherever it went wrong. But that's very healthy to do.
Yeah.
So
Like, and it's funny because it's like, I want to say is that like, I am a very conflict driven person. And I don't want to say that in like a negative way because I actually do love that about myself. And the fact that it's like, I'm a Sagittarius moon, I'm a fire moon. And it's just that like, I really feel my emotions so heavily, but I'm somebody who would just like, I deeply value conflict as a means of connection. You know, I deeply see it as a way of like, okay, conflict exists because of this need to want to connect or to solve a situation or just to express, you know, these feelings, these big emotions. So I deeply value conflict, but I will say, you know, in the past, it got me in so much trouble because I am very confrontational, you know, like, I'm very confrontational. I will start an argument, I will start a talk, and it's just like my emotions can go from zero to nothing, which is why I love being able like crash out journaling. Oh my God, that has to be a new term in like the self-help space. Crash out journaling is the key to your success, guys.
I was literally like, not on the Libra full moon actually. So yesterday I was after the space of gratitude, I was looking back in my journal like from the beginning of the year to now, and I think I did something like similar to crash out journaling where somebody I like who's like no longer in my life, I was just like journaling. I was like screw, like I was just like going ham on this person in this book. I was like, damn, like I'm so glad that I was able to let it out, just like as a way to forgive myself and forgive also the other person. But like to put this out there, I know like you and I are both feel very comfortable with those primal feelings of like anger or frustration. Like I think, correct me if I'm wrong, like you're also very comfortable with that, but it's using it and having a healthy outlet for it. For example, like crash out journaling or like finding healthy outlets so you're not putting that on somebody else. Now, obviously, we have to go through these experiences, excuse me, if we're not given the proper tools and resources when we're younger.
Mhm.
But like then once again, like you learn and grow from the situations, you're like, okay, this is
Yeah.
what works for me now, and I can like choose to communicate differently in this moment.
Exactly.
You find things that work for you.
Yeah, because I want to say is like before the way that I used to communicate it was by starting arguments and starting fights, which obviously helps nothing. It helps
Yeah.
nothing. Like, but that was a hard lesson for me to learn because of the fact I felt this deep need to resolve a situation quickly and immediately, you know, when emotions are still high, which obviously led to like a bigger argument or a bigger fight. Like I was hurting the existing karma. And like now it's like, okay, I can still honor that need in myself of like trying to kind of fix a situation, but I can do so in a way, in a manner that's, you know, like better for me and better for everybody else around by like writing in my journal and getting those feelings out, but then being able to be like, whew, okay, well now that the crash out is over, I can stop being a little bit delusional in my anger and like find a bridge of connection in that. Um,
Yeah. You also said like anger is righteous. Anger is also healthy. So anybody listening out there, you can use anger. Anger is so powerful. Like transmute it into something where you can create with it.
mhm,
Because anger is actually, I learned that anger, it's a healthy emotion. It shows that you have like passion rather
mhm,
than like there's like anger and hopelessness. So like when you have like that anger, when you have that frustration, it shows that you have that drive, you have that motivation, but we just need to like transmute it and alchemize it into like something different.
like,
It's a
sorry,
secondary emotion. So
secondary.
anger, like beneath anger, it can be like an unmet need. So like for me, when I get angry, sometimes I feel like I almost feel like not heard, not understood because what I'm trying to communicate, I feel like I'm being challenged on something. And
Mhm.
then if it gets into like this whole argument, so then I feel sad. I feel like this person's not listening to me.
Yeah.
Mm. And so, yeah, anger is a secondary emotion. Beneath it is something different, whether it's like grief,
Yeah.
sadness, um,
But
and
like, yeah, but you need to be able to feel the anger to kind of get to the root, to like the other emotion.
right.
Yeah, that's why
And
I love, I don't know, I feel like especially as a Sag moon, I just like I've come to just really like enjoy the process of like conflict and understanding it as a means of connection. And like not in the way of like like actively searching out to like fight somebody. No, it's not that, but just more so understanding like the the core energy of conflict is connection. It's kind of like how we're talking about anger is a secondary emotion. It's like conflict is like the anger, and the secondary emotion is not the secondary. The primary emotion is this need for connection or the need to be understood.
yeah. And I think that kind of like goes over like spirituality, like impacting development, but like overall like transmuting what was I saying? Transmuting pain and like anger into something that um you can work with.
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
it's a tool. Like anger is a tool.
It's cool. A
Yeah.
powerhouse.
I think this is a good point to kind of like go into like that other quote that you have by Dr. Maya Spencer.
Yeah. She wrote, I literally had it. It's right here. So she says the spiritual journey the spiritual journey involves first healing and affirming the ego so that positive states are experienced with secure self-esteem, belief in self-worth, and a capacity for love and generosity. A person becomes less constrained by ego defenses. An opening of the heart space is an essential aspect of true spirituality. And that last sentence that was the one that really sold me because like the quote goes into dealing with leading with an open heart back to full cyclical moment like again with the heart space and the heart chakra. It's really like leaning into your heart space and making conscious choices to do differently, which is a part of like our spiritual journey and our growth and our development, which leads then into trusting our intuition and wisdom, which we
Mhm.
talk about later.
I think that like brings us to like the end of our episode. So just in like closing, if you guys have any questions or like I would love to know like what are your like spiritual tools or your spiritual palaces, practices, and like how has spirituality impacted your own personal development? I would love, love, love to know. You can leave it in the comments of this video. You can leave it on the Instagram. You can leave it on Instagram. Such an old lady when I said that.
Leave it on Instagram.
But yeah, I would love to know. Connect and engage with us. But yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. I really want to know what also tools and yeah, practices that have helped you navigate difficult moments in your life, navigating like your spiritual journey and different transitions in your life. Um, we
Do
can
you guys
also,
out journal as well? Am I
yeah,
the one who does this, or collectively do we all appreciate crash out journaling?
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Two votes in the house right now.
Oh, goodness.
All right. But thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you guys for being here and
Mhm.
we'll not see you, but
We'll chat next time.
we'll chat next time. And I guess we could say we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, see you in the next episode. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.